different types of food, including M&Ms. But in bold writing, the writer said, you can find this online, it said, absolutely no brown M&Ms, right? Bold writing.
Let's go.
Hey, Nick, I'm wondering, what are you doing? You're sifting jelly beans.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed, Joris. Yes, I'm taking out all the black jelly beans out of this bag of jelly beans.
And why would you do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm doing it to highlight an interesting point. Have you ever heard the story about the brown M&Ms in Van Halen?
No, I have not. I know what brown M&Ms are, but I don't know the story.
So there's this famous story about Van Halen. They were, for those in our audience who's not familiar with it, Van Halen's this tremendous rock and roll act, and in the 1980s, they had this really extensive road show with pyrotechnics, and Eddie Van Halen would jump over the drum kit and explosions, and really impressive road show. Of course, nowadays Taylor Swift is a lot more involved than that, but back in those days, the road show was very, very involved and had wires, trapeze acts, explosives, and so you want to make sure you get that right. And so David Lee Roth had this concept of having a contract that they would send it in advance. It was called a rider, that anybody who was going to have the Van Halen Roadshow show up, they would have to follow this very specific detailed set about the safety, the wiring harnesses, the pyrotechnics, as you can imagine. You want to make sure that those shows are going to be safe and the performers are safe. And as a trick, or I guess as a test of the compliance in those regulations, they had some very serious, some very ridiculous, if you will, provisions in that rider about what was available to the performers backstage. And they had things like they needed a flat of water, which in the 80s was interesting at that time, a carton of smokes, and different types of food, including M&Ms. But in bold writing, the writer said, and you can find this online, it said, absolutely no brown M&Ms, right? Bold writing. And the reason for that was not, the vanity of David Lee Roth or the band, but rather it was an indicator for them so that when they showed up into the dressing room and they saw M&Ms there, and there's brown M&Ms, they know they didn't read it properly. And so if they didn't get that right, the safety equipment may not have been done appropriately either. And so that's why you want to make sure that you read the details, and more importantly, have mechanisms that you can track to see that proper safety elements have been maintained.
Thanks, Nick. I think that this lesson is very relevant to our medical device space, right? Where we often have to think about safety and efficacy and have a lot of attention to detail.
Absolutely. And so items like that, call it our standard operating procedures or standard laboratory practices, or elements in those procedures, having that in there to as indicators, as you say, for medical device safety and development is really important. So I was just going to do a presentation later on today, and this is my example.
Sifting through jelly beans.
Sifting through jelly beans.
Well, anyway, thank you so much, Nick, for
All
the
right.
story. That was the end of Bio Break.
I'm going to go enjoy my jelly beans for my bio break today.
Great, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.